at all. You should have sound. So let's see if that brings the sound up here now, guys. Now that I'm talking, hopefully that's going to catch up and you're going to hear. So do me a favor. As soon as the sound comes up, let me know. And I think you're going to have sound momentarily. Just 1 second. It's coming. All right. So hang in there, guys. It's coming along here. You're going to hear me in a second. Okay. All right, good. So now we got audio. I'm being told the audio is up. I apologize. So what I was saying to you guys is be forewarned. I have no idea what's going to happen tonight. Literally, when I set everything up tonight, for whatever reason, the file that runs the software for the TogChat was apparently corrupted. So every time I tried to launch it, the program crashed. So I literally rebuilt the whole show in about 15 minutes. So that being said, we're flying by the seat of our pants here tonight. It's going to be a little bit crazy. So obviously, if there's any other issues that pop up, please don't hesitate. Start typing. Let me know. I'm going to try and make it through this because I'm building some changes into this. You're right, Troy. I do like talking to myself because sometimes that's what it feels like I'm doing. But anyway, so some cool stuff here. Part of what's going on here, which I have a feeling is what kind of triggered the whole problem today, is I'm making some technology changes to be able to do this whole TogChat thing a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently. So the first part is new little toy sitting back here yet. It's not in place yet, but when you check into TogChat on Thursday, it may look a little different. That's because right now you're looking at me through a Nikon D810 that's being used as a broadcast camera. So it's set up on AC power. It's running through a Blackmagic Design Ultra Recorder, creating a 1080p high stream feed. But starting on Thursday, I'm going to be switching over to a Panasonic GH4, which is the same kind of camera that I use to shoot my tutorials. So I'm going to be rewiring the office setup here, setting up the GH4. I don't know that I would ever become a Panasonic shooter for stills, but I got to tell you that Micro Four Thirds, when it comes to video, is just off the charts. So since I'm using the Panasonic for the other stuff, I'd like to get my other Nikon D810 body back here to be able to use it for stills. So I'll be switching all that stuff out. And also tonight, for the first time, instead of showing you the images for review through the web browser, as long as all goes well, the game plan is I'm actually going to be showing them to you through Lightroom. And also what I've pre-done is pre-programmed all the EXIF data and all that, so it'll show up on the screen so I don't have to read all that stuff, so that I can focus on the comments that the person who posted the picture provided as far as the hows and the whys behind the shot. So there might be a couple mistakes here tonight, guys, but we're gonna wing it. We're gonna see if we can get this together, and just like I've been doing with this for you guys from the beginning, we'll ride it out no matter what happens. So that being said, I hope that you all had a great weekend last weekend. I hope that you got some shooting in and got some photography in. No, Kenneth, it's not a Blackmagic camera. However, they're pretty cool, but yeah, I don't really need that. I will say, and I don't want to start doing gear reviews. A lot of people have already said to me, hey, why don't you do a gear review on the GH4? Well, number one, because they just came out with the GH5. And that's actually why I picked up the second one, because the prices have dropped dramatically in the GH4. And like I said, for stills, I'm not ready to go to that small sensor. I will say, in all fairness to the folks at Panasonic, I belong to a couple Panasonic groups on Facebook just to kind of learn a little bit about the Panasonic world and what's going on, because I've only been using the GH4 since last, August, when I did that week up at YouTube. And then right before I went out to WPPI, I got that little GH7 or G7 that you see back there, which great cameras. I love them for video, but I joined these groups just to get a sense of, what can the Panasonics do? And I got to tell you, like, they turn out some incredible imagery, and it continues to show the whole idea, guys, that it's not the gear, it's the photographer. The other thing that we have to be kind of realistic about, and in all fairness to Panasonic and even, other brands, so I'm not just sticking up for Panasonic, but the way that we display our photography and the way that we use our photography these days, it's a lot different than it used to be. So, the overwhelming amount of imagery that we consume, it's done digitally on, an iDevice or a computer screen. So we don't need to blow stuff up to 16 by 20 and 20 by 24 all the time. Now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, but I'd like to make a big print, and that's cool. I'm not saying everybody should abandon their Canons and Nikons. I'm not saying that. But I am saying it's amazing what these Micro Four Thirds cameras do. But indeed, I'll tell you what, when it comes to video, I mean, obviously, I like my Nikons. Canon does great stuff, but you can't beat what these Micro Four Thirds do when it comes to video. So that being said, a couple little pieces of business here, okay, before we dive in. Let me just switch my screen over. For those of you that have not had a chance yet, there is a new video up that went up this weekend. Here you see it right here, okay? It's my new tutorial on photography conventions like WPPI, Imaging USA, Photo Plus Expo. Are they worth it? There's some footage from my trip out to WPPI in Vegas. I would encourage you to take a look at it, and also make sure when you watch the video, pay attention in the link in the description below the video. It'll take you to an article on my blog that has a listing of all the major photo shows around the world. So you click through, you go to their sites, and you can see what's happening there. Okay? And let me just see here, guys, about this echo that you are talking about. Let me know if that took care of the echo. That should have killed your echo there. And again, I told you it's going to be a little rough tonight. I apologize, but I think that I just wiped out the echo for you there. So let me know. And if that's not the case, I'll switch back to the other screen. Okay? All right, so I'm hearing that it's not fixed. So let's go ahead and let's click back to the single screen. That should have resolved your problem. And again, guys, I'm really sorry for those of you that maybe tuned in late. The problem that I ran into today is that right when I launched up the software tonight, for whatever reason, there was something corrupt with the program that I was using, or I should say the preferences file for the program. So I had to rebuild it all really quickly. So I hate making excuses, but it is what it is. I wanted to make sure we got on the air and got the show going. So I will try and avoid the browsers for tonight. So what I was telling you guys, if you visit the YouTube channel, there is a new video, went up over the weekend. It's all about photography conventions, conferences, all that kind of stuff. There are links, if you follow the link in the description to my blog, there are links on my blog that will take you to all of the major photo shows all around the world. Ones that I know I have coming up that I will be attending for sure later this year in October. I'll be at Photo Plus Expo in New York. And next year, on my target list are number one, I will be heading to Photokina for the first time ever in my career, which I'm really looking forward to. And I'm also hoping to get over to London for their big show. So I do encourage you guys, overall. In fact, this Vegas trip that I just did was my first time to WPPI. I've been to Imaging USA. I've been to Photo Plus Expo many times. The WPPI show is very, very impressive. It's huge. And one of the great things, and I make the point in the video, one of the great things about having a convention in Vegas is simply that it's cheap to get there. If you're in the United States, you can fly to Vegas very inexpensively. The hotels are cheap. So anyway, that being said, make sure you check that out. Also, the other browser window that I was going to show you, which I won't show you since I've got a problem with that shot, is that the folks at doityourselfphotography.net, DIYphotography.net, they were kind enough to write an article about it. John Aldred wrote an article about that video and also added some kind of input and information of his own, which is really, really good information about what he finds valuable about these shows. So if you guys have never been to one, especially, I would encourage you to check out the video. you really don't know what you're missing. And so certainly it's not like you necessarily need to go to every single one or go to every single one every year. But as you progress through your career, and when I say career, it may just simply mean your development as a photographer or your development as a pro, I really would encourage you to make it a point to try and get to these shows from time to time. Great learning opportunities, even if you do it on the cheap and just go to the expo, because most of the expos you can get into for free if you plan ahead a little bit. Even if you just go for the expo, the learning opportunities are incredible. Plus, you get to play with all the cool gear and see all the new toys and all that kind of stuff. So I do highly recommend it for you guys, okay? So that being said, as always, if you like what I'm doing, please share the video, click the thumbs up like button. You can even do that part right now. And remember, hey guys, I understand how live stream works. I appreciate your help. Once again, my program file crapped out 15 minutes before I went live. It's something that you should do in about 2 hours. I did it in 15 minutes. So that's why I told you guys as soon as I signed on tonight, there's going to be some issues. Closing my live stream window is not going to help. Yes, it can handle multiple streams. Obviously, I know how to work it. I've been working it for months now. I just didn't have time to get it all set up. So I apologize, and I appreciate your attempts to help me. It's simply a matter of time. Okay, if you've ever actually used live stream, you don't set up a program in 15 minutes. It just doesn't work that way. Okay, so I want to get into the images. John Allred's here. So, John, it was playing up. Hopefully, it's not playing up anymore. But I was just talking about you, so maybe that's why it was playing up, because I didn't really want you to hear what I was saying. Anyway, so let's try and get into pictures here, guys. For those of you that are not members of my Facebook group. Now, I can't imagine why you would be here and not be a member of my Facebook group, but if you are not, you can submit your photos to be reviewed. The link is in the description below, simply tog.chat/photo review, and that will allow you to fill out the same bits of information that we require in the Facebook group, and you'll be able to have your image reviewed. In fact, a couple of the images that I'm going to look at tonight are images that did not come from the Facebook group, but they came from direct submissions here on YouTube. If you are not a member of the Facebook group, I would encourage you to check it out. We've got like over 6,000 people that are signed up at this point. The link is in the description section below. I won't give you the whole rundown and all that kind of stuff. I will just tell you, hey, it's a great group. You ought to check it out. And I promise you, I'm not just saying this, it is very, very different than pretty much any other Facebook group about photography that you're going to find. Okay, so the adventure continues, guys. Like I told you, we are going to try this tonight for the first time in Lightroom, okay? So bottom line, that means that we are going to have a little bit of adventure here. If there are any technical issues or any of that kind of stuff, I want you guys to make sure that you let me know. Again, I had this thing all set up working, and apparently when I saved it earlier, the file corrupted. So, we're winging it a little bit here, gang, okay? But this first shot that we have here, so you'll see, just so you guys can see kind of how I change this up and how I'm going to try and use this going forward. Up in the upper left-hand corner here, you're going to see the photographer's name and location, and you're going to see all the basic camera specs. So this shot is from Dan Biziak in Chicago, Illinois. It's done with a Canon 70D with a Canon 50mm 1.8 lens. He shot it at f2.2, 1/6400th of a second, and ISO 100. Life here, it would be much better for you to send me a finished picture. In other words, the photos that I'm reviewing your image as you present it to the world. So if you're just getting started and you haven't learned, any Photoshop or Lightroom work or that type of thing, I would really aggressively encourage you, join my Facebook group. In the Facebook group, and I'm not going to switch back to that browser tab right now so I don't pick up the echo for you guys. So follow along and I'll describe it pretty simple. When you join the Facebook group, when you first go into the group, of course, you see the discussion wall, which is no different than your timeline on your homepage. But up at the top of the group, there are a set of tabs, and one of them is Photos. If you click on the Photos tab, all you see are the pictures that have been posted to the group. And what's great about doing that is you can look through that selection and find images that really are similar to what you're trying to achieve and what you want to be able to do. But when you click on that image then to view it, you're going to get a novel of information, first by the person that posted the picture, about all their settings, what kind of gear they used, why they were taking the picture, what they were trying to accomplish, what kind of obstacles they encountered, what kind of problems they had to solve. If they could do it again, what would they change? And then you're going to see all the feedback from different members of the group. A lot of it, it's questions asking for more information, and then it's feedback about how they would have handled that particular shot. So I'd really rather see your finished images. For me to do your retouching or just a comment on the shot's not really going to help you that much. So you might want to wait a little while before you submit for TogChat. But by all means, join the group, because even if you're not posting a lot of pictures, I promise you, you're going to be able to learn a lot of stuff in there, okay? So back to our shot here from Dan. Dan is in Chicago, Illinois. He did this, I gave you guys the specs already. So a little bit of background. This is an all available light shot. There's no reflectors, no additional strobes. So I decided to show you guys this picture because at first pass, when I first saw it, it really caught my attention. It was kind of like, wow. And to give you some of the background information from Dan, he obviously desaturated a lot of the image. He left the green on the flower. He left the yellow and a little bit of the skin tone. Everything else, he went black and white. So essentially, it's kind of that. It's those evil two words. It's kind of a spot color shot, okay? Overall, he's happy with it. The model was happy with it. So those are two very important things, okay? He says if he could change one thing, he'd like to play around with some different angles to get better composition. And for feedback, he asked specifically, should I move away from doing, I'm going to quote, color pop photography? So, Dan, first of all, at first glance, as much as I know a lot of you know I hate spot color, right? But at first glance, Dan, I got to tell you, I actually kind of like this shot. Like, kind of well done. So, since I have a feeling Dan probably doesn't know some of the history, let me just give a quick little, background here, Dan. Spot color is basically when you take a shot, kind of turn it black and white, and then leave just a little bit of color in there, okay? So, and that's fine. That's something it's been done for a long time. It was really, really big back in the early 2000s. So right before Christmas, I released a video called Don't Be a Zombie Photographer, and that video had kind of my wish list for photo trends that would go away, and I joked about the idea that one of them was spot color. So, Dan, my response to your question, should you move away from it? On the immediate side, yes, please don't even look back. Move away. And here's why. You are clearly kind of new in the learning curve and trying to really build your repertoire. I would discourage you from getting too caught up in gimmicks. And it's a gimmick. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from the creativity of your shot or anything like that, but it is a gimmick, okay? So before everybody jumps all over me, bear with me for a second. Let me go full circle on this thought, okay? Initially, Dan, I would encourage you, focus on kind of the big learning scheme and work in full color and all that kind of stuff, because indeed, your comments about trying different camera angles, getting better composition, that's actually where this image has the most room for improvement. Because remember, I already said I actually kind of like the spot color on this shot. So all of that being said, spot color, when it's used in a very creative way, has its place. Well, unfortunately, what happens is people tend to take a really bad picture and decide, oh, if I do spot color, that kind of jazzes it up, and now it's kind of cool. Spot color for that purpose sucks, period. So, that being said, let's take your image as is. From a purely technical standpoint, your concept actually is pretty good. From an application standpoint, you need to work a little bit better or a little bit more on how you do your selecting. If this image gets blown up, the edges here where we're going from the yellow sofa to the green background, which is turned black and white, a lot of the sofa is starting to turn black and white. You can see it especially up here along the top. So you've got to do your masking a little bit, actually a lot cleaner, okay? So that's, if you're going to do the spot color thing, it's got to be really clean. That's important. From the standpoint of composition and camera angles, I have to say that honestly, I like your composition. I like the idea that we're straight on in the sofa. I like the idea that the sofa gives us some symmetry and that the model breaks the sofa up. What I really, 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 really wish, though, is that she was centered in the sofa. The fact that she's all the way on to the left and then we've got this extra space on the right, that unfortunately for me, it's frustrating because I talk about it a lot. I like symmetry. I use symmetry frequently. I'm a big fan of it. But yeah, that's the big piece for me is I really just wish that she was moved over into the center. And then from there, if I'm going to get really, really picky, and again, when I do these reviews, I'm always trying to push people a little bit more to really pay attention to details. You'll have some people, Dan, that will look at your shot and they will complain about her hand that's draped over the edge of the sofa. In a perfect world, instead of that hand being draped over, let me get where you can see me here, there. Instead of that hand being draped over the sofa, the arm should come forward and be resting soft on the sofa. And then that way, the fingers are going to aim back into the dress. They'll be traveling the same line as her toes. But really, the big thing is just scoot her over just a little bit more. And then also, too, just to be clear, when you do scoot her over, and I don't know if you'll ever have the opportunity to actually kind of repeat this shot, but if you do, I would say, my God, go and do it. That would be like a really good thing to do. Scoot her over just a little bit. And then make sure that there is a little bit of space between that white rose and the sofa. In other words, they shouldn't be touching at all, okay? So, that's really the big thing. And then I guess one other thing, and this is really kind of personal opinion, so I'll throw it out there. I really do think it would improve the shot, but I don't want you to think like, oh my God, this is something I should never do. I'm not a big fan of the vignette in the shot. I use vignettes a lot. Now, I need to be clear though, while I use vignettes a lot, I rarely do just the simple rounded corner vignette. That to me has the connotation of kind of very old, and I talk a lot about like I don't like things that look old. I lived through those kind of portraits in the 50s and the 60s, well not the 50s, but the 60s and all that kind of stuff, and I don't like being reminded of that. So I'm not a big fan of the rounded corner vignette. In this shot, I really think that it didn't need it. I think that you could have left everything as is. And then the only other thing that I will say is, if you're going to go with this black and white and the spot color thing, you could open up the shadows just a little bit. So I'm just going to grab the shadow slider and bring it up. I don't think it's bad to have a little bit more detail in that background. The background's out of focus. You've used depth of field well. I think that you would be okay to leave a little bit more detail there. Okay? So those are my thoughts on spot color. But for the time being, since you're asking, my advice is, yes, move away from pop color. Focus on good pictures in general, especially if you're going to work with a model like this. Really focus on what you're doing with your model and all that kind of stuff. And then along the way, if there's a picture that's just literally screaming for it and it's going to be amazingly creative, then sure, go for it, okay? All right, next up, we have a shot from Kelly from Cesena, Italy, and I'm, of course, probably completely butchering that name. But this shot is done with a Canon 60D. He shot it with a Sigma 35mm f1.8 lens at f2.8, 1/125th of a second, and ISO 200. So Kelly lit this with two light sources. He's got a flash with a red gel behind the subject and a ring light at 45 degrees and slightly above on camera left. Now, the interesting piece of this, it's shot in a very, very tight space. He only had 1 foot behind or between the subject and the background. So it's really, really close. Kelly also told me that he asked his subject to go ahead and do some push-ups before he shot. Almost looks like this guy doesn't need that, but certainly if you've got somebody and you're really going for that muscle definition, getting them to do some push-ups, some sit-ups to really kind of activate those muscles is definitely a good idea. It's something that will definitely benefit your shot. So, interestingly enough, when this shot was first posted in the Facebook group, one of the things that a few people commented on is the shadow that you see here along the edges. So, and there was a little bit of a back and forth discussion because indeed, when I look at this, I'm kind of very curious about the shadow because the answer that Kelly gave, and Kelly, by no means am I going to say you're wrong, but I think you're wrong. Kelly's thought process was, and remember, he was the only one that was there. His thought process was that since the subject was so close to the background and the light was bright, essentially that it was bouncing off the subject to create the shadow. I've never seen light work that way. I really think that somewhere along the line, whether it's ambient light or some other light source, is impacting us to create that shadow. I mean, at 1/125th of a second, we certainly don't have ghosting, so that's not the case. If there's a bright light source in the room, like a table lamp or something, we're shooting at ISO 200 wide open, we could be picking up a shadow in that background from like a table lamp or something like that. So to me, yes, the shot would be a lot stronger without that kind of rim shadow. That kind of shadow is similar to what you get if you're using like a ring light and you've got a person right in front of a background. But the problem with this is the ring light's up and above. So that's, and that shadow's coming from below. So the shadow's above the subject's shoulders. So it's clearly, yes, Bjorn, that's pretty much the quote. I don't know how else to say it. Bjorn just said, I don't want to say you're wrong, but you're wrong. Yeah. Maybe I'll put that one on a t-shirt too. Hey, actually, that's a little note that's worth passing on to you guys. So a lot of you know that I launched, that Tog Swag thing back in the fall and had some t-shirts and coffee mugs and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, I did not do it thinking I was going to get rich. I did it to support the channel and because I had Patreon going live and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to lie, I did it kind of, half-assed. It was in a hurry. Well, the great news is the gentleman that did my rebranding with me, Roberto Pinto, who's a member of our Facebook group, he is working with me on new designs for the t-shirts. And Bjorn, since you are, posting my quote here, the thing that's actually kind of cool about the shirts is these shirts are shirts that you would actually wear. I would wear these shirts. They are really neat, but they are quotes. So obviously, your best shot is your next shot and all the quotes that I routinely use. Those are what's on the shirt, along with kind of the new brand. So the catch light in the eye that sits in the O's, all that kind of stuff. That's a part of it. So that's going to be relaunching next month. I'm actually really excited about it. A lot of cool stuff. So it will be, out there for you guys. But back to our shop. Kelly, my bigger concerns for your picture here is, and I understand you're in a tight spot, so let me leave that out of the equation just for a moment, and we'll come back to some possible suggestions. But shooting with a 35 millimeter lens on a person in general is a challenge. So the fact that it's a 60D, we're talking an APS sensor, so it's kind of got the effective focal length of a 50 millimeter, but when you get close and you get a little bit low, you are going to pick up some distortion. Now, in the case of this shot, the distortion, it kind of works. I don't think that it's necessarily bad, but honestly, what I really wish was that you weren't shooting at 2.8, since, there's a lot of distance between his belt buckle and that bracelet that's on his wrist to his eyes. So fortunately, you did at least focus on his eyes. That's really important. But obviously, it's getting soft as we get to the bottom of the frame. So, I would argue that for a shot like this, you want to have a little bit more depth of field. So that may require you, because I assume it's a ring light that's probably a fluorescent light and not a strobe. So that would mean it would require you in all likelihood to go ahead and boost your ISO a little bit. And then the other thing that I will say is generally when you are, kind of shooting somebody with this kind of muscle tone and muscle definition, you want to accentuate it as much as possible. So this is just a make sure this is part of your thought processes. I'm not saying that you did poorly. I'm not saying that what you did is wrong. I'm just saying make sure this is part of your thought process. Generally, when you're doing that kind of muscle definition, you really want to get some good cross lighting on it. But at the same time, you don't want the shadows to completely block up. I like the way that your light kind of falls off to the bottom, but I would argue that something as simple as a Walmart reflector, my little white foam core reflectors that I use, on camera right and low, not all the way at the bottom. So in other words, we don't want to kind of fill in the jeans, but at about waist level and tilt it up, you'll pick up just a little bit of fill in there that I really think is actually going to help you accentuate those muscles, and it's going to give you a little bit more detail. That's not a right or wrong. That's just, I think it would help if you like the dramatic, fall off, then, that's absolutely fine. So those are really the things that I would encourage you to consider. If you're going to go with a shot like that where you're shooting low, be really careful about shooting wide open because at least, like I said, you focus in the right spot. You went for the eyes. That's incredibly important. But it's soft at the bottom of the frame. So you can kind of get away with it with a shot. But generally, and again, I hate rules. You guys know that. But generally, when you're talking about a guy and the guy's muscular and he's chiseled is sharp. And so usually you want that sharpness. You want things to be crisp. You want a lot of detail. That's going to help accentuate that. So when stuff starts to get soft at the bottom, that really kind of takes away from your efforts to do that. So again, just make sure that you're making a very conscious decision when you do that kind of stuff, okay? Don't overlook that piece of it because it's a very, very important piece. And then obviously be very careful when you're on an APS-C, make sure that you're not getting too close with that 35 millimeter lens because even though it gives you the effective crop of a 50 millimeter, it still gives you the same distortion as a 35 millimeter lens because it is a 35 millimeter lens. So a 35 millimeter lens, it's pretty easy to pick up distortion if you're not careful. But in terms of your mood, in terms of the color scheme, in terms of what you're trying to accomplish here, I love it. Absolutely love it. So I would encourage you, if this guy is available to you and you can shoot some more, I would absolutely try and photograph him again. And even in your tight space. I mean, don't let the tight space beat you. And this applies for all of you. The tight space, never use the tight space thing as an excuse. All good photographers are excellent problem solvers. That's what this is all about. And I don't care if we're talking about the camera angle aspect of it. I don't care if we're talking about the props. I don't care if we're talking about the mood and the personality. And especially if we're talking about the lighting. It's about problem solving. That's the key. So even in a tight space, and this is a great example. I mean, by no means is this a bad shot. So, Kelly's got a great example here of what you can do in a really tight space. So I would just love to see you go back and fine tune it, etc. Also, Kelly, it's just worth noting because some people are very literal. Some people may complain about the bright red that's coming through on his arms from the flash and in part that being so close. Honestly, that doesn't bother me at all. I kind of like it. I think it adds to the drama. So, I wouldn't stress that part too much. And then honestly, Kelly, the only thing I'm going to tell you, even though it's Monday and not Thursday and we're not talking about marketing, I would really encourage you to get rid of that watermark, especially since it's an eye. Like nothing about that watermark says photography or photographer. So it's kind of like, his eyes are up here and then there's another eye there. There's a third eye. Like, what's that all about? And And the worst part of it is you've got it on a solid color background. So if somebody wants that image, they can remove that watermark like literally in about 3 seconds. It's not a challenge at all to a person with basic Photoshop skills. It is not a challenge to remove that. So honestly, my advice is get rid of it. It's not doing anything for you. I got into a big debate this past week about a photographer that felt it was so important to put watermarks on their image because they're building their brand. Please go back and watch my marketing videos when I talk about photographers who say building their brand. Your logo doesn't build your damn brand, period. You are the brand. Your photography is the brand. Those two things and those two things only. That's the brand. Okay. So yeah, I really would. I mean, it does for me. It takes away from your shot. And you've got a nice shot here. There's room for improvement in the shot, but given the problem solving that you went through and what you're trying to accomplish, I really think like ultimately great job. Okay. All right. Next up, we have a shot from Gus, who was in London. Gus shot this with a Sony A7R II with a 24-70 at 70 millimeters, a f8, 1/160th of a second, and ISO 50. So basically, we've got a full-frame portrait, 70 millimeters, and really kind of stark, and I'm going to use the word harsh, but harsh in a good way, black and white portrait here. So just to give you a little bit of the background that Gus gave me on this shot, this was his first post in my Facebook group, so welcome, Gus. He shot this tethered to his laptop using Capture One, which is great software. I wholeheartedly endorse it. And for those of you that are interested in shooting tether and haven't done it before, I will tell you that your two primary choices, and there are some other options, but your two most well-known and most commonly used choices are either Lightroom or Capture One Pro. Lightroom is kind of the poor man's way to shoot tethered. If you're shooting product work or that kind of stuff, no big deal. It's painfully slow. If you're working with people and you're shooting portraits or especially models, believe me, it's Capture One Pro and there's really no other options that are out there. The other thing that's great about Capture One Pro is strictly a raw generator. That's according to Capture One. They're not trying to be anything else. So the ability of that software to process raw images and especially to do color management and evening of skin tone and that kind of stuff is just off the charts. It's incredible software. Be forewarned if you're not familiar with it and you're thinking, oh, I've got to run out and check that out. Number one, it's expensive. Number two, it's got a serious learning curve. So I don't care how good you are at Photoshop or how good you are at Lightroom. Don't think you're going to open up Capture One and be ready to like start running right away with it. You will need to pay attention. You will need to go through the learning curve. And none of that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that to discourage you. I'm just saying, hey, be realistic about what you're walking into. Okay. So he shot this tethered using Capture One. He created his preset while he was shooting. So he had a black and white preset that got him close to what he wanted for his finished image. The background was lit with a 5-foot octabox behind the model so that he could get an even light. And this was also a tight space scenario. That 5-foot octabox took out about a third of his work area. So for those of you, again, that are working in tight spaces, having these huge light modifiers is not necessarily the way to go. There are better ways to solve the problem. One of the videos that I'm in the process of working on right now is kind of a do-it-yourself modifier set that you can put on top of a shoot-through umbrella that's going to create you light like an octabox, light like a beauty dish, light like a softbox, all with a shoot-through umbrella. And it's so incredibly simple to do. So look for that coming soon, okay? So now, a little bit of background here, because what I liked about this shot from Gus is Gus gave me a little information on kind of how the shot developed. And number one, I'm really pleased that he shared it because many people do exactly what he's told me and I'm about to relay to you. And in fact, I do it in the sense that a lot of times when I first set up my shot, I've got this great idea. I think the light's going to look good. I think it's all going to be perfect. And I put the model in front of the camera. I take my first shot. And it's like, yuck. The light's just not right. So you have to change it. and you have to modify it. So Gus started first. He lit him with, let's see, he was looking for a real crisp silhouette. So his initial key light was with a beauty dish and a grid, high and on camera right about 4 feet in front of the subject. The problem was it wasn't hard enough for him. It's not often you hear people saying that a beauty dish is not giving you hard enough light, but that was the case. So he was only able to back it up so far, and also so high because this guy's like 6'3", so presumably he had the guy standing up. So he switched to a bare bulb, but that wasn't really working either because it was throwing light everywhere. Remember, he's in a tight space. So he decided to go with just a normal 7-inch reflector that's on the strobe, and he made a homemade 20-degree grid from a black card, and that gave him the focus and the crispness they wanted in the light. So we've got some really good problem solving here, plus a little bit of DIY going on. So he particularly really likes the shadow, and how defined the shadow is. This was a case where he really wanted that definition. And obviously this gentleman's got really great chiseled features. So I mean his face is really like perfect for doing that kind of heavy shadow. But heavy shadow is not a substitute for bad light, and drama is not a substitute for bad light. So, this is a great example. I mean, we've got both eyes really well lit. We've got catch lights in the eyes. So the shadows are harsh, but the shadows are not destroying the face and the mood. So the only other comment that Gus gave me is that he'd like a little bit more light in the hair, because he doesn't think the volume does the justice to the texture, like it needs a little bit more texture. So, when I loaded this into Lightroom, just hitting the shadow slider and pulling up just a little bit without impacting the shadow areas, you can bring that detail up really, really easy. And then if you were to do this in Photoshop as well, with a little bit of masking, you could keep all that shadowing really intense on the face, because obviously here, let me go back. You notice here, now it's back to where we started. If I bring it up, it's also going to lighten the shadows on the face a little bit as it brings the detail up in the hair, but ever so slightly, but it does. So working in Photoshop, it'd be really easy to mask that back. And indeed, in Lightroom, you could actually paint it back too, but it certainly would be easier in Photoshop to do that. So I don't disagree with that. Gus, I think it would be nice to have just a little bit of detail. I wouldn't want it too light, so it's like that, where you're seeing all the detail. But I think, somewhere maybe in here where you're just starting to get a hint of the detail in his hair, I do agree with you. I think that would actually be, really, really well done. I think, Gus, that some people are going to look at the shot and complain about the logo in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to tell you, honestly, that really kind of depends on, the point behind the shot, in the sense of, like, if this was an ad, for instance, or even if this guy's like an athlete and this was like a portrait of him, then having that Adidas logo is no big deal, because obviously we know those stripes are Adidas. I mean, that's a big part of the Adidas brand. It's the 3 stripes. If this is just essentially meant to be a dramatic portrait, and that's it, it's not about the guy being an athlete or anything like that, I would actually encourage you to go ahead and take out that logo. I think that the shot's going to have a little bit more impact and be a little bit more dramatic. But if that's kind of part of what the story of the shot is, then that's really not a problem at all. I don't think that, you have to stress it. But I know it's one of those things some people are going to say, oh, yeah, you need to get rid of the logo. It really depends on kind of the intent behind the shot. Okay, but really great shot, really well done. I'm not a guy that does a lot with really dramatic shadows, so I really appreciate it when I see a shot with shadows where, shall we say, shadows done right. And I think this is really an excellent execution of using shadows for drama, but still having the image be flattering. So well done. All right, so this shot is all the way from Mexico, Guadalajara City. David Corona. So the specs, he shot this with a Canon 6D, a 100 millimeter 2.8 macro. So for those of you that are, maybe not particularly into macro lenses, I will tell you that macro lenses make awesome portrait lenses. You guys have heard me talk a lot about the Tokina, the 100 millimeter f2.8. You can buy that lens for under $400 on Amazon, and it is the sharpest freaking lens you're ever going to see. Brass insides, old school build. The only downside to that lens It's got a plastic casing outside. The plastic casing is fine, but it feels cheap. That's the only downside to the lens. But in terms of the structure and the stuff that counts, awesome lens. And the Canon 100-2.8 is awesome. The Nikkor macros, also awesome. They make great portrait lenses. The trade-off, you're not going to take those lenses out and shoot sports or shoot a lot of fast action because they're not the fastest when it comes to autofocusing. But, if you're shooting a portrait, your subject's not running all over the place. That's not a portrait. So there's no reason that you have to have that ultra fast autofocus. Okay. So, nah, Troy Joe could take a brownie and knock us all out of the park. Nah, believe me. So some of the background that David gave me on this, okay? He lit this with a Canon 430EX speedlight. He's got it in an octa-box on camera left and also slightly above her, and it's about a meter away from her, okay? He did his editing in Photoshop. He used some frequency separation, some dodging and burning, and for the version that he kept, he has removed her piercings as well. She had... let's see, she had, and also a little distracting green element that was in the umbrella. He took that out, and he's done a little bit of face-aware liquefying. Okay, so originally when he set up the shot, he was working on a background that was lit red. In fact, David mentioned to me that he built the PVC background stand that I did the video on. He was working on a background that was built to be red, but he decided when she showed up with the umbrellas that the umbrella would make a much cooler background and he would film the frame with it. So in terms of what would David have done different, the things that he listed 3 things. 1, find more space to work in. We'd all love more space, but again, photography is problem solving. So I don't really sympathize with the space issue for everyone. I've worked in tight spaces. I've worked in massive spaces, and it's the same. 2, add a second light on camera right. Okay, I mean, you certainly could do that, David. I mean, that would, make it a slightly different picture, give you a different feel, but there would be nothing wrong with adding more light. And then 3rd, add a watermark before sharing photos with her. Considering the exposure I'm seeing in her post, I think I'm missing recognition and brand exposure. So, as far as that last piece, David, a lot of you already know how I feel about that. I'm going to say this. Tune in on Thursday night. I'm going to talk about the watermarks and brand recognition and brand exposure a little bit more in TogChat. I really think it's one of those things that is worth talking about a lot. So it's going to be kind of one of my pet issues, shall we say, for this year. I'm really determined to make people understand marketing a lot better and the psychology behind marketing, because the bottom line is putting watermarks all over your images. I'm not going to tell you that it's never going to get you a gig. So let's be clear. Never is a word that you're not going to hear me use. My life has taught me that pretty much any time I say never, it comes back to bite me in the butt. Just does. So, there are always exceptions. But in the marketing world, or in the business world, when it comes to marketing, there are tons and tons and tons and tons of statistics. Because believe me, advertising is so expensive, people don't do anything unless they've got the statistics to prove it. And the statistics simply prove slapping your name and some logo and all that stuff all over your picture, even when it's small, even when it's out of the way, even, and I'm not going to name any names. I know a couple of photographers that go to great lengths to blend their name into the picture, so that it's not obvious. So they're doing a subliminal watermark. It's like, really? No. Because if it's subliminal, people aren't going to notice it. The only people that are going to notice it are photographers, not regular clients. So that's not helping you at all. It's obnoxious. Any way it goes, it's obnoxious. And the thing you guys got to understand is it doesn't protect your rights anymore. You have no additional rights when it comes to the legal system because your name's on the picture than if you don't. If you want legal rights to your picture, then file a copyright with Library of Congress. That's the only way you get legal rights. But if you want to be rest assured that you can make somebody take down the picture that's yours, then you don't need to have your name on it. You simply don't. Your rights are exactly the same with it as they are without it. So all you're doing is ruining the picture. But I'll talk more about that on Thursday, David, so I would encourage you to check in on that. So a couple of things here. Overall, I love the shot. I love the personality behind it. So for me, I want to be clear. What makes this shot first and foremost for me is the personality. The shot's kind of busy. There's a lot going on in the picture, okay? But the personality is awesome. She's adorable. I'm not a big fan of pursed lips. You guys hear me talk about that a lot, where you got to be careful with the pursed lip thing. But the little bit of grin and that sparkle in her eyes really, really makes this come together. Working with glasses is always a challenge. You've got your light up high enough so that there's no, reflections or that in the eyes. Really, really good. I would actually suggest, and this is an opinion, I would suggest the next time you pull the shot out to work on it, go ahead and use just the blur brush in Photoshop and blur the umbrella a little bit more. Just soften it a bit more, okay? Now, here's the three things, if I'm being super, super picky. So again, this is the stuff where I'm going to point out in details to kind of try and take you to the next level. It's not that these details are ruining the picture now, but they are details that will make things cleaner. So number one, remove the earring. That's the brightest spot in the picture, and it shouldn't be. Number two, I would encourage you to take your clone stamp and draw the shoulder down right here and get rid of this little poof of dress that's sticking up, just so that we get that nice line of red that will come down as a result of it. Because to me, that's kind of awkward that pops up there. And especially since it just happens to meet the line of the umbrella, I would get rid of that. And the third thing is something that you're not really going to fix now, but you could cheat with. This is really something to watch out for in future shoots. And that is, notice the gap on the dress here. And I realize this isn't a bra strap. This is like the dress has this kind of extra strap built into it. I understand that. But notice the gap here. We don't have the same amount of gap there. In fact, there's barely a gap at all here. If it were me and I was using this shot for my portfolio, I would remove the earring. I would fill the gap right here, which would be very easy to do. And I would fill the gap over here. And I would take out this black piece on the shoulder. It's going to make things a little bit cleaner and take away all of the distractions. Add to that, softening the focus on the umbrella in the background. It's going to continue to push all the attention towards her. Beautiful girl, great expression. I really like it. Thanks for sharing. Okay? All right, next up, we have a picture here from Diego in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So this was shot on a Nikon D7200. Finally, we get a Nikon tonight, huh? A Nikon D7200, an 85mm f1.8 lens, f5.6, 1/50th of a second, ISO 800. Okay, so Diego lit this with a Yangwoo 568EX. He's got a Photox 90 by 60 centimeter softbox on camera left, which we can pretty much tell from where the shadows are. He did his processing in Lightroom and Photoshop. And some of the other comments that he gave me here before I dig into the shot. He used to do a lot of portraits like this, wide open at f2.0. And of course, the outcome, as I'm sure you can imagine, was that the back eye was frequently out of focus because the face was turned. So he's been working on paying a lot more attention to as he said, keeping the head in the box. So for those of you that don't know what keeping the head in the box means, it's the way that I describe head position to my model. So if you've never seen me talk about it before, I do talk about it in one of my older videos about creating modeling shots with energy. I do discuss posing in there. But basically, one of the things that I teach the models that I am working with is that when I do turns with their head, they're pretty much going to feel like they're in a box. In other words, this is about as far as I'm going to move their head the entire time I'm shooting with them. And then I go on to explain to them. So I don't just tell them that, because if I'm the model and I want lots of really cool pictures, that sounds kind of like, wow, he's just going to take a lot of really boring pictures of me because they're going to all be kind of like the same. So the reason I do this is, number one, to make sure that I am always getting good impact on the eyes. But what I explained to the model is why. So I explained to them the idea that if I turn their face to here, because if you just say to somebody, turn your head, they're going to go all the way over to here most of the time. The problem with that is now, as you look at me, my pupils are shoved into the corners of my eyes, and there is no impact from my eyes. It's not flattering. if I bring my nose back slightly to here, so I came back about halfway, now the pupils are not shoved into the corner of the eyes. So there's more impact from the eyes. But my face is still turned. I'm still doing a head turn. So that's the head in the box reference that Diego is making here that I talk about. And indeed, what it does is it always keeps the eyes in play. Now, certainly if you're looking for a profile, well, then the person's not going to be looking you in at all. But even then, if I'm going to have the person look over here, if you watch my pupils closely, I'm going to make sure that they are looking where their nose is pointing. There's a video on my website called It's All About the Eyes, and it talks about this, or not on my website, sorry, on YouTube. It talks about this in detail. If I've got them looking this way, I want their eyes going where their nose is, because what a lot of people will do, if you watch my eyes closely, you'll tell them turn, the nose will stop here, and the eyes will stop over there. So I'm actually looking at a point that's beyond where my nose is right now. But as a result, you see very little of my pupils. Whereas if I bring my eyes back looking in the direction of my nose, now the eyes are balanced. Even though it's a profile, they're balanced. And so you get more impact from the eyes. So also, Diego made the comment here, never let your model pose with contact lenses of any kind. And I actually wrote back and asked him about that, so I'll tell you, what his answer was there. He's very happy with the shot. Overall, he would have had the model take the contact lenses out. And he's also really happy with the outcome of his skin retouching, because he felt that prior to this, he was getting a little bit heavy-handed and it was fake. Okay, all of that said, Diego, I'll let the watermark slide. We already had that conversation, okay? Really, I have 1.5 beefs with this shot. At first glance, very impactful, really nice shot. I'm not a fan of the lighting that leaves the shadow casting on the face, that kind of stuff. In other words, for this face angle, I would have had to have my softbox on camera right, not camera left. But a lot of people do this. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I'm not a fan of it. Here's my issue. I find the composition to be a little awkward. I really wish there was a little bit more space at the bottom of the frame. I struggle with where it's cropped on the chin. And it's not that I have to see the whole chin. It's not one of those things. But ironically, I'd rather see the whole chin than see the top of the head. Like, it doesn't bother me to cut off the top of the head. But for some reason, I just feel like we would get a little bit more impact if there's just a little bit more space at the bottom, okay? And then the other thing that for me, your comment about the skin being more realistic, I'm glad that you feel that you're getting closer. But I have to be honest with you, I really feel that, and I'm pretty sure you didn't mention any of your comments, but I'm pretty sure you're using frequency separation. And I still feel like you're going just a little bit too far with it. This skin, especially here in the highlight area, it's still looking a little bit plastic. It just is. It's not bad. I don't want to say it looks completely fake, but I really do feel you could dial it back just a little, because generally, and again, generally, so don't take my word for it, start looking around, pay attention to what you see in ads, especially like makeup ads and that kind of stuff. Generally, when you're going to go this far with making the skin smooth, you're going to take out the color spots and the flaws in the skin. So that's kind of where I'm struggling with this. It's like, she's got like these little sunspots and that, and discoloration, but yet the skin has like overly perfect texture. And then the only other thing I will point out to you, Diego, and this is an opinion, this is just what's in front of me. If you're going to continue to progress with doing the model work and that kind of stuff, I would encourage you to find a makeup artist. Now, at the risk of, hurting somebody's feelings here, but I've got to be honest. If this is with a makeup artist, then you need to find a better one, or she needs to do more practice. There's a couple things that you have to understand about makeup. Smoky eyes. Every girl loves smoky eyes when she's going out and hoping to find a guy in a club. But smoky eyes in front of a camera are the best way to make a girl look like she's a raccoon. So the kind of smoky eye that a good makeup artist does for the camera is much lighter than what a girl would actually wear out to a club when she's doing smoky eyes. I just feel that, this blending, it's really uneven. and it's really dark up in the tops of the eyelids, and I just don't think it actually brings a lot to the shot. And also the way the lip is drawn down here, it's crooked, and that's simply the way the lip is drawn. That's not her lip. The lip is drawn crooked. This, Diego, you can fix in Photoshop. Liquify will allow you to fix that really, really well. But if you're going to do a shot this close and go for that much impact, and if you're really trying to up your game, those are the kind of details that you have to look at. That lip is sloppy. So a good makeup artist would never put that picture in her portfolio or his portfolio because of that line. They would either ask you to retouch it. Roy, you got something against raccoons? Honestly, that's what it looks like, Roy. Smoky eyes, when they're too dark, they don't photograph well, and you basically turn the person into a raccoon. So, but again, it's all about details. I think overall, Diego, you're doing good stuff here. But now, if you're gonna get to the next level, you got to really push on the details. And please do be aware. And guys, this is for all of you. You have to do a little studying about body language. We're looking down on this model. Her face is back, turned sideways to the camera. She looks apprehensive. She looks unsure. I'm not saying that's bad, as long as that's really what you were after, Diego. But please be aware, between the lighting, the camera angle, and the head tilt, that's what's coming out of this shot. This is not a shot where the model looks confident. This is not a shot where the model is looking like she's enjoying what she's doing. So, make sure that those are conscious decisions. I have found that a lot of times when photographers finally get brave enough to get close to the model and do these kind of shots, and suddenly you have this full frame image, it's like, wow. I found that a lot of times what happens at first is we overlook those details because we're seeing so little of the person's body. We tend to forget that body language is still a factor. We could actually crop this image tighter, and body language is still a factor. It never goes away. Even if you get down to the point where you're looking just at your eyes. A couple of my college students turned in an assignment. I was in class today and we were reviewing assignments. They turned in an assignment, which the assignment was not about body language, but they photographed two different people. They photographed one eye, a left eye on one person and a right eye on the other. And each person had a completely different emotion. And they put them together like it was one face. And just by looking at the eyes, you could tell the difference in the emotions. So believe me, body language goes all the way down to just an eye. James is asking me, do I have an issue with the shadow down the nose? I mentioned a little bit earlier, James, this is not a lighting setup that I would take. In other words, for me, right now, the light, the softbox or octabox, right? It's an octabox, sorry. It's a softbox, sorry. 60 by 90 centimeter softbox. He's got it on camera left. For me, I would have to have it on camera right to eliminate all shadows. A lot of photographers do this. I mean, and that's why I kind of presented that comment that way. I tend to like soft lighting with a female because women are soft. I know it sounds corny, right? But that's just kind of how my mind wires it. So you guys have seen my work. I tend to go with very even, very soft light. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do it by any means. I would be fine with that shadow ultimately if her expression was a little different. I think that's what I'm looking for, and that's why I struggle a little bit with kind of the body language. So yeah, that's for me, James. That's one of those things when we start talking about that shadow. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's a rule; it shouldn't be there." Because some people will say, "Well, it's not really like Rembrandt lighting. If the light was higher, then it would be like Rembrandt lighting." But yeah, it would also be Rembrandt lighting backwards. You see what I'm saying? So that's honestly, to me, it's kind of one of those personal things. I don't mind the moodiness of the picture. I just wish her body language / facial expressions was just a tiny bit different. That would kind of be my thing as far as that goes. So, but that's a good question. It's a very fair question. So, okay, moving right along. And by the way, guys, it's coming up on quarter of. I want to try and get a couple more shots in here, but I will take the last 15 minutes or so and do a Q&A as always. So if you guys have questions, you want to start dumping them in the feed, I will go back and answer stuff. Mphonic, my video feed got a little out of focus. Seriously, you got to stop drinking when we do these things. I mean, I realize you guys are probably doing the drinking games, but yeah, that's a stream thing. Every now and then, if your buffering is not right, you'll get that. But I can tell you that the feed that's going out here is at full power, and you should be okay. In fact, Troy just mentioned if you leave the page and come back, just refresh, that problem should take care of itself. So Marcos threw a question here, which is actually good. So let me back up since I kind of trashed the makeup artist. Let me deal with this real quick. What's the limit between the responsibility of a makeup artist and the work we can make on Photoshop? Marcos, as far as I'm concerned, there's no limit, but let me be a little more specific since I know you're looking for specifics. And I talk about this a lot. If the picture is for a model's portfolio, so let's just say hypothetically that this picture that Diego was taking was for a model who was going to take this photograph and go into a modeling agency, in other words, for the purpose of trying to get work, then it is your responsibility as the photographer to not alter the face. That doesn't mean makeup, but to not alter the face. There you go, April. That's good. Every time I say smidge, take a shot. We got it. So, that being said, Marcos, makeup isn't the same as altering the face. So for me, my responsibility is if the makeup artist does a crap job, and if I did a crap job, meaning I didn't notice it and I took the picture anyway, then it's my job to fix the makeup. And I've shown pictures before in past videos where and if you guys remind me, if you haven't seen it, because I know there's a lot of new people, if you remind me next Monday, I'll gladly show you. I talk a lot about the fact that if a young makeup artist contacts me and says, hey, I'd love to work with you, I, as a rule, will tell them all the same thing. I will tell them that I will gladly spend a whole day and do a full shoot with them for their portfolio for the purpose of getting beauty shots. My terms are real simple. They have to find the model because I want them to be working on a face that they are excited about and that they love. And number two, they've got to then pitch me with 3 ideas, okay? 3 ideas starting from like a clean look to a really dramatic look. And once they've done that legwork, I set aside a whole day and I'll work with them. And I'll turn it into a YouTube video or some article for a magazine, whatever. So I make it worth my while. But I use an example frequently when I'm teaching of one of these shoots that I did. This is probably about 6 years ago now. The first 2 shots of the day were okay. This young woman that was doing the hair and makeup turned out to really not be very good. We got to the 3rd shot, which was the creative one, and she had a pretty cool idea as she described it. It took her about 3.5 hours to get the model ready. By the time she got the model ready, we were well past the time that we were supposed to stop shooting for the day. The model was exhausted. I was exhausted. The makeup artist was exhausted. And simply the makeup looked like crap. And I made the fatal mistake of shooting this picture. And the reason I say fatal mistake is the minute you press the button, the expectation is you're going to deliver a picture. So the whole time I'm shooting this picture, I know it looks like crap. So I was angry with myself afterwards since I took the picture because I should have simply just pulled the plug and said no. The girl would have hated me. She would have thought I was the world's biggest asshole after she did all that work. So I took the picture. I literally spent 14 hours on the shot in post. I removed all the makeup and put all new makeup on. And I figured, you know what? She's either going to be offended, but she's going to be offended because I fixed it or, whatever. Ironically, the girl actually put it in her portfolio. So that's a whole nother debate. But the point is, if it's a matter of altering something that's real and the shot's for a professional portfolio, you can't touch it. When it's for yourself, absolutely. If the question, Marcos, was, well, what about if you're making a version for the makeup artist? Are they going to be offended if you fix that lip? No, I assure you they're going to thank you. Now, if you decided that the eyes were too dark and you made them lighter, if it's for the makeup artist portfolio, you may want to ask about that. But for yourself, do to that shot whatever you need to do to make it work, okay? All right, let's get another shot in here. So this shot is from Tim in Payson, Arizona, and I wanted to talk about this one because he's got some interesting points behind it. So it's not the most creative picture in the world, but there's some really good learning points here. So Tim shot this with a Nikon D200. It's a 28 to 80, 33 to 5.6, and he's got it set at about 80 millimeters at 7.1, 1/25th of a second. ISO 200. So the background on this shot. Tim was hired by this client to do her photo for a book that she was publishing, and the publisher wanted headshots and also even some full-length shots. The examples that they gave him, they were all, clean, white background, even lighting, white, real simple, okay? The woman brought a couple different changes of clothing, and she wanted her some photos that portrayed her both as masculine and feminine. So this headshot was one of the more masculine ones. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because, gang, I hate to tell you, this is a reality that we're dealing with today. I've actually had a very, very similar shoot where I had to take a very feminine subject and make them very masculine. And this was not for creative purposes. This was for lifestyle purposes, okay? So, Tim had a really tight space to work in. He shot this in his apartment, which is very small. He lit with two Yangwano 560 strobes, placed at a quarter power on each side behind the subject. That's keeping the white wall even and white. And then he put two Nikon SB900s at 1/8 power each on a 24 by 36 photo Diox softbox, and then he's got one of those on each side of the subject in front. So it's basically real simple, 4 lights, 2 on each side, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. That's it. The subject was about 3 feet away from the main lights, and the background lights were about 3 to 4 feet from the background. So he decided to take this shot from a slightly lower angle to empower the subject, but also had to balance it by having the subject stretch her neck a little bit to eliminate the double chin. 2 really good problem-solving things, okay? Overall, he's happy with the results. The client was very happy. So the reason why I wanted to point it out is, number one, Tim made some very, very good choices here. I mean, as far as the shot itself, them wanting the white background, the clean light, that's kind of a very standard thing these days. So, mission accomplished, well executed, that's fine. In terms of the decision to go with a slightly low camera angle, since this was meant to be a masculine shot, very important, very wise. Anything else makes it more feminine. The stretch of the neck, also very good solution to the slight double chin, especially since you're working with a lower camera angle. That's the only way you're going to mask it, short of having the person wear like a huge turtleneck, which is not really going to work. The only thing I'm going to ding you here for, Tim, and this is kind of a big one when you're photographing somebody with glasses, but you got to push the glasses up. And I do believe Tim made a comment somewhere in his original post that she didn't have much of a bridge of a nose to work with, but that's just kind of one of those things. You got to keep pushing those glasses up, pushing them up. Even if you have to take some tissues and stick them behind the arms back here to pull the glasses back higher and hold them. She's got enough hair to hide the tissues. I've done that before where, I'll essentially create padding that's going to pull the glasses back and up. Now, of course, that's not going to work on a guy with short hair, but if you've got a girl with a lot of hair, that will allow you to go ahead and pull those glasses up high. But that's really the big one. I mean, certainly we could argue that it might be nice to see her looking a little bit happier, but depending on the topic of the book and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to, push too hard there, but I really wanted to highlight the idea of having to do the kind of masculine look on a feminine subject, and then also your choices with the lower camera angle and the chin. Very, very well done. So I want to get to one more shot here before I get to your questions, guys, but I see the questions are coming in, so by all means, go ahead and keep loading them up here, all right? The reason why I wanted to get to this one is Lewis is a photography student. For those of you that have been to a few of these, you know that I always go out of my way to make sure that we address the students in the group. And when I say students, I mean young, okay? So Lewis is from Queens, New York. He shot this on a Canon Mark III 70-200 millimeter lens at 3.2, 1/125th of a second, ISO 100. So a little bit of background. He did light this with a, as he calls it, a basic Neewer brand flash and a little mini softbox. And he did some post-processing in Photoshop. He did the shot for one of his final class projects. The project was open, so he decided that he would shoot with natural light with the help of this cheap Neewer flash unit that he got online, okay? He did the shoot on the street in Manhattan, kind of guerrilla style. I thought this was interesting and worth sharing. He met this this beautiful Brazilian model on Facebook and asked her to do a shoot, and she kindly accepted. And he's actually had good success in New York finding his models on Facebook. So good for him. Okay. So he did the shot around 11:30 in the morning. She was standing with the sun to her back, and we can see on camera left how, we've got nice highlights on the hair here. The flash was positioned on camera right to light up her face. The whole idea was to create, quote unquote, beauty shots for a student portfolio, final project, and for the website that he's building. If he had to shoot it again, he'd probably ask her to tilt her heads backwards to create more hair volume and crop the top just a little bit more. But overall, he likes the highlights on the hair and the choice of depth of field. Although he does feel he could close it by about half a stop to get a bit more detail on the background. He would, of course, love to have a makeup artist with him, and he realizes he may have to start spending some money to do that. So, Lewis, here's my take on your comments. Let me start with the depth of field aspect. I actually would not stop your lens down anymore to get more detail in the background. The background doesn't add anything to the shot. It doesn't tell you any more about the subject. It doesn't tell you any more about the outfit. It doesn't tell you any more about the girl. It just becomes extemporaneous detail. So I wouldn't try to get more of the background in focus. Really, my biggest concern is with your composition. I think cropping the top is not really just a solution. Excuse me. I find it a little bit awkward that her leg is cropped right here. So first of all, I will tell you this. You refer to the idea of beauty shots. So I'm going to be straight with you. There's nothing about this picture that's a beauty shot. Call it a fashion shot? Maybe. But a beauty shot? No. A beauty shot, nice and close, period. Super close, tight. Could you do a beauty shot on the street in New York? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this girl's gorgeous. So to get in really tight and do a nice beauty shot of her, I would wholeheartedly encourage that. But this is not a beauty shot. So the fact that her body's in the middle and she's kind of, everything's running off on camera right, and we've got all that extra top space, I definitely would love to see you fill the frame a little bit more. But I think what you've got to do here is you've either got to go for a full-length shot, in other words, get both the feet in, and then obviously cut out more space at the top, or go 3/4 length and maybe crop it so that you're just seeing the top of her left leg, the leg that's bent, and better yet, go super, super close and actually do a beauty shot, nice and tight, nice and close. The only other thing I'm going to throw at you here for the sake of time is a good rule of thumb. Now notice I said rule of thumb, not rule, okay? A good rule of thumb for posing, if it bends, bend it. So those arms being locked out solid, I'd like to see them just relaxed a little bit. Same with the wrists, relaxed a little bit. Okay. It'd be different if she was like really leaning back and holding on. Okay, then, it kind of makes more sense that the arms are stiff. But if those arms were relaxed a little bit, she'd also be able to cheat her shoulders a little bit more to the camera, which would actually give you a whole lot more impact in terms of her pose and her look. Troy, as far as the bra thing goes, yes and no. That's going to depend on the purpose of the shot. So let's take it two ways. Let's take it from the finished picture and then let's go back to practice. Troy asked me here, he wonders if she should be braless because of the top. So as far as the finished shot goes, if this were a true fashion shot, it were for a designer and the shirt was meant to be sheer and worn with a bra, then it's not a problem to see the bra. Certainly the bra should have been flesh toned. That would have been better. Let's talk about practice. If I've just met a girl on Facebook and I've got her to come out to shoot with me, even though I'm on the street in Manhattan, there's a lot of other people around, etc., I'm not going to assume that she is willing to wear that sheer top without a bra. I would potentially ask her if she was open to doing that. But the better solution is plan ahead. Always know what outfits the girl's bringing in advance. Make sure you've seen pictures of them and tell them then. bring a nude bra. Done. And then you don't have that problem. If it was something that was really bothering Lewis in this shot, it would actually be very easy to blend that edge down using the healing tool. Just blend that edge down, and then you're really not even going to realize that she's got the bra. But that would be my suggestion there as far as that goes. Okay? All right, guys. So let's switch the screen back here real quick. And now your questions. All right? So let me back up here and see what we've got, because I know Nick had a question and a couple people said, yeah, I was wondering about that. So Nick's question, how to promote photography, not a certain photography business, but photography as a product. Seems like people today are fine with selfies and not willing to pay for anything more advanced. Well, okay. So Nick, I would disagree with you. This is not going to be a popular answer, so everybody be forewarned, okay? And this is really a better question for Thursday, so let me kind of give you the short version now, and you guys show up on Thursday. I'll gladly talk more about this. I disagree with you in the sense that, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm going to kind of say it the way it kind of needs to be said. When photographers are going on about the fact that nobody wants to pay for their services, it's just a bunch of whining. It's like, stop whining. Not everybody can be a successful photographer. Not everybody can be the best photographer. You just can't be. Period. Not everybody can be president. If only we were that lucky. Not everybody can be this or that or whatever. But that also doesn't mean that, not everybody can win the Daytona 500 or the Indianapolis 500. And in fact, only a few people can ever actually get in a car and race on that track. But there are thousands more, hundreds of thousands more in the country, in the world, that drive race cars at a smaller level, etc. So, the challenge is, if you want to make money as a photographer, you've got to generate something that people want. And then find the people that want it. And literally, it is that simple. I'm not kidding. It's that simple. But there's one piece I'm not mentioning. The piece I'm not mentioning is the hard work. Social media, and this is not me being an old fart. This is just holding up the mirror, guys. Okay? Social media makes people lazy. We think, how cool is it that we can reach out to thousands of people in seconds? So much better than word of mouth. I mean, seriously, guys, go back to my very first video on social media marketing, because this is really where this answer lies, okay? You still got to put in the work. Social media is just a vehicle. It's a medium. That's all it is. You got to put in the work. If you want to make a living as a photographer, understand that that's not about taking pictures. That's about running a business. But I had no problem getting people to pay me. I had people get on a plane to come all the way across the country to pay me. I had people come from Los Angeles regularly. We could argue that they were pretty damn stupid because they're photographers that are 1,000 times better than me in Los Angeles. So why the hell did they need to come to Allentown, Pennsylvania? Because I developed a product and gave them a reason to come to Allentown, Pennsylvania. That's why they do it. So, the how-to part is go back and watch my marketing videos. Literally, that's how you promote your business. But the piece that we're leaving out of your question, Nick, it's the hard work. You've got to put in the hard work. Nobody gets to just put a bunch of pictures online and then people come flocking. It's not like that. You can put a bunch of pictures online and get hundreds of thousands of likes and all that cool stuff. But no, that's not how you make money. That's just how you inflate your ego. Okay, I mean, I hit 71,000 subscribers this week on YouTube. Yay, very cool. And by the way, thank all of you. Seriously, I really, really appreciate the support. But what does that do for me? Not much. In fact, I'm going to make less money this month than I did last month. Not dramatically, but less. So, the good news is, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. My whole 1-year plan that you guys heard me talk about is way ahead of schedule. Things are going great. When I started doing all these TogChats, I knew that the advertising revenue was going to fall off a little bit until I kind of turned the corner, which it has. It's coming back. It's all good, what I expected. But yeah, I mean, it's all about putting in the hard work. That 71,000 number, it's good for my ego, but it doesn't do anything for my wallet until I finish the process of, creating everything that needs to be created around all of this. That's when the real money will start to flow in, and that's when it will all, come together. But it's on track. But literally the way you do it is hard work, Nick. Sorry. I mean, that's the best answer that I got for you. Okay. People are willing to pay for photography. People are willing to pay big money for photography, big money. But the fact of the matter is there's only a set amount of clients that are willing to pay that. So there's only a set amount of clients that are going to make that kind of, or set amount of photographers that are going to make that kind of money. And that, my folks, that is no different today than it was 30 or 40 years ago. That hasn't changed at all. Like literally has not changed at all. It was no easier 30, 40 years ago for people to make money as a photographer than it is today. So, okay. All right. So, let's see. Actually, it's silver, Troy. Thank you. The first plaque at 100,000 is silver. So Original Entertainment is asking, Joe, I'll be moving to fill frame soon. Which camera I advise you to buy? I'm looking for a D610, a Nikon or equivalent from other brands. Are mirrorless cameras worth it? Wow. So you're asking me a question like that. You want to just get me to start up a firestorm, don't you? Which camera do you buy? You buy the one that you like the best that has all the features that you want. Okay. I will tell you the Nikon D610, it's a nice camera. So is the Nikon D800 if you can afford a little bit more. So is a D810. Let's talk about the difference between mirrorless and a regular camera like a Nikon D610. I'm actually not going to get into that argument. There is a lot of value to the mirrorless cameras. I was a Sony guy for a year, 12 months. I owned no Nikons, sold all my Nikon equipment, went completely Sony, and then I went back to Nikon after a year. Some might say that was stupid, but hey, I did it. I mean, I like the concept of the mirrorless. I love what Sony is doing to a point. Contrary to people like Jason Lanier, contrary to Manny Ortiz, who's a part of my Facebook group and occasionally drops into these, and I have mad respect for them, for the kind of work that I do and for my style of working, Sony's not quite ready for prime time, and more importantly, they're not committed to building a professional system. So at first, and at the time that I did my Sony thing, the problem was that everything needed adapters. So to me, how stupid is it to buy a system that right out of the box, you're going to have to put a bunch of adapters on stuff? Like, to me, that was dumb. So I was counting on the idea that Sony would come out with more lenses. They're finally coming out with more lenses. So that's great, okay? And Original Entertainment for wedding photography, doesn't matter any kind of photography. It's really more about a style of working, okay? There are wedding photographers using Sony. There are wedding photographers that think that's the dumbest thing in the world. It's just like anything else. It's a matter of your taste. One of the great things about using stuff like Sony's, or even somebody just typed in Fuji. Fuji's not ready for primetime, guys. I hate to tell you. The thing you're overlooking here, Fuji, to be clear, before we start a firestorm, please don't sit here and defend your cameras. Listen for a second. Just listen for a second, okay? It's more than the camera. You've got to look at the system. You've got to look at the peripherals. You've got to look at how easy is it to attach lights and triggers and all that other kind of stuff. You've got to look at all those pieces before you start saying, oh my God, but this is the best camera, okay? It's not just the camera. When you're talking about making money and shooting weddings or shooting models and all that kind of stuff, it's not just about the camera. It's about what is available to work with the camera to allow you to do the job that you need to do. So please, let's not do a camera debate. If you've listened to what I'm saying, I haven't trashed anyone. But I'm giving you simple math. And simple math is, I'm talking about not having to go out and buy all kind of adapters and oddball gadgets to be able to make my camera work. I'm talking about buying a camera, being able to go to B&H, and being able to go to Amazon, and boom, get the accessory I need and run with it. Nick, I'll come back to you. I did answer your question. I hate to tell you. So back to the mirrorless thing. I would say to you, Original Entertainment, what you need to do, and actually you should go to one of these photography events that I've talked about, or physically go to a camera store, or rent a Sony, rent a D810, okay, or excuse me, a D610, and try them out, okay? Get a feel for them. Better yet, start to build out your system on paper. Okay, so I'm going to get this camera. What lenses do I want? What flashes do I want? Do these flashes work with this? You literally got to map it up. Or map it out, Map it out and make sure that you can do your whole system. And just like, and I'm sorry, Mphonic 2013, the Fujifilm comment, Fuji's are great cameras. They're producing beautiful stuff, but they're not ready for prime time in terms of being able to accessorize and put a system around them. That's the problem. Now, if you're going out and you're doing, an occasional model shoot, or you're doing landscapes and that kind of stuff, my God, yes, man, run with those Fujis, okay? But if you're going out and you need to do like weddings and all that kind of stuff, you need to be able to tie into all the lighting systems that are available, that they're not ready. Sony is getting a lot better. So Sony's a lot closer to that finish line. So, the thing that you need to understand, going back to original entertainment's question, don't look at the camera alone. Map out what does your whole system need to be, and then start looking at what's available. And my God, if you can do it with Fuji and you like the size and the weight and you want to spend the price, run with it. Go for it. But I don't think you'll be able to. Not without having to put in a lot of kludgy fixes along the way. Okay? If you can do it with Sony, Sonys are great. I mean, seriously, the quality of Sonys, for all of you that are wondering, the tipping point for me on Sony, I was willing to ride out the lack of lenses because I refused to do all the adapter crap. Jason Lanier's into all the adapters, and that's great. If you're into the gear, wonderful. I'll be damned if I'm going to buy a camera system and I have to put adapters on it to get lenses on it. That's just not going to be me, period. So that being said, I was willing to ride out the lens thing. When they came out with the, the A7R2, that's the 40-some megapixel one. The fact that it could only do, and maybe they've changed it since, but at the time when it first came out, it could only do a compressed RAW file. So here's these 40-some megapixels, but you can only shoot a compressed RAW. And I get it. It was lossless compression, yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to have that debate. I'm sorry. That's something that they could make a software switch. In other words, they could give the end user the choice. Shoot the lossless compressed RAW or shoot an uncompressed RAW. That to me indicated that they are ultimately not committed to putting out a professional camera system. Are there a lot of pros, a lot of really good pros that are using Sony now? There are. It's very doable if it fits your working style. Just wasn't there for me. That's the thing. But again, the mistake that you don't want to make, original entertainment, is don't pick the camera. Pick the system. If you're looking at the D810, I keep saying D810, the D610, start there and start imagining, okay, so obviously you need more than a camera to take pictures. The camera by itself doesn't do the job. You got to have lenses, you got to have flashes, accessories, all that stuff. Map it out on paper. What's your system going to be? Even if you're not buying it all at once, what do you want it to be? What's the game plan? And then figure out if that camera that you're looking at will work, with that system, if you're going to be able to do it and if you're going to be able to do it affordably. Then go buy your camera. But if you're unsure about, the mirrorless and that stuff, try both. And I will tell you that the Nikon sensors are made by Sony. So, just saying. But it's ultimately not the sensor. It's about the way that the image is being processed, and that's where the difference is. So, that's the type of stuff that you need to consider. So, Nick, I want to come back here really quick. I answered the wrong question. I don't have a problem promoting my business. Lots of people come, watch my portfolio, and scream, it's awesome, but no sales. So, again, Nick, actually, I did answer your question. Okay, so Nick's response here, I realized I need to read it all because it's going to go away. After I answered Nick's question about people not wanting to spend money for photography and that, his statement to me is, Joe, you answered the wrong question. I don't have a problem promoting my business. Lots of people come, watch my portfolio, and scream, it's awesome, but no sales. Everybody says selfies are enough. I stand by my answer, Nick. You're talking to the wrong people, or you're not putting together a product that is actually good enough for people to pay for. Keep in mind, we live in a society where people are taught to be nice. It's no different than when you see the 2-week-old baby in the stroller at the supermarket. 2-week-old babies are not the most beautiful thing that you've seen in the world. They represent something beautiful, but they're not beautiful. But what do we say? Oh my God, that baby's so adorable. That's going to be the next Gerber baby. Well, the irony of it is How the hell does that person know that it's going to be the next Gerber baby? Because if they did know, that would mean that they worked in advertising and worked for Gerber, right? But they don't know. They're just being polite. So people don't like to do confrontation. So who's going to look at you, Nick, other than Joe Edelman, right? Who's going to look at you and say, man, that picture sucks? Like, who's going to do that? Nobody's going to do that. So I'm not saying that your work sucks, but I'm just saying it's people being nice because that's what we do. So you're right that it doesn't count unless they're putting money in your pocket, but it means that you're not talking to the right people and you're not creating a product that people will pay for. That's where your disconnect is. Find the people that will pay for your product. They're out there. You're not working hard enough. But that's how it works. That's how it worked since I was 11 years old when I picked up my first camera. That's how it worked since I was 14 when I first made money with a camera. And it hasn't changed since. It simply hasn't changed. It's no different today than it was then. So that's really the piece there. Okay. Troy asked me a question, and he typed it twice here, so I better answer it. How can you light a full beard so you have a strong strand definition instead of fine like a woman's hair? Troy, that's not about the lighting. That's about sharpness. Just get it sharp. I mean, beer is really coarse. It's kind of like that picture that I showed earlier of the guy that looks like a soccer player. So here, let me switch the screen back real quick here, guys. If I can get back to Lightroom here. Yeah, let me switch back and bring, this shot with the guy's hair. Here's the shot as it was submitted. If we bring it up a little bit, there's the detail, Troy. So it's really about making sure that, your image is sharp and also making sure that what you're doing is getting close enough. Because at the same time, if you're not getting close enough to actually be able to see that detail in the first place, don't expect your camera or your lighting to do that. And by the way, full disclosure, I just noticed here, which is also good to point out, Christopher Brown, thank you for that update. Sony did release an update that allows the uncompressed RAW, which is good because I know it really ticked off a lot of people when that first happened. And I still stand by my overall feelings. I'm not convinced that Sony is truly committed to the professional thing. I do hope I'm wrong. I mean, what I loved about Sony, I love the size. Can't beat the size and the weight. It was awesome. The price, reasonable. I think that their A7R series, the big cameras, I think they're a tad overpriced. But when you look at those compared to like Nikon and Canon, they're not. The other thing I really liked about Sony, and you guys have heard me talk about this with Nikon, I really like Sony's ergonomics. They use more of kind of the old school industrial style design on their cameras, but everything just fits right. Like everything's where it needs to be. And that's important to me. A camera's got to feel good in my hands. It's got to be easy to operate. And I really like that. Plus, I will tell you guys that have not worked with mirrorless cameras before, the EVF, the electronic viewfinder, is nice, man. It's awesome to see a finished image. It's like it's, when you're shooting and you're seeing the finished image instead of, just an open viewfinder, that's actually nice. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but not a ton. But it is really, really, really nice. So, Carl Har, are you able to use the Color Passport with Capture One software? Absolutely. You can do a eyedropper white balance. Yes, that's not a problem. So, Roy Patton, biggest question. It's something I struggle with as a photog. Tips, tricks to shoot darker brown skin tones and plus size subjects. Wow. Do you got like 3 hours here? I'm sure you do, but I don't. There's really no tips and tricks. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. So for me, to shoot a person with dark skin, I'll do that any day. I love it. I'd rather shoot a person with dark skin than a white person because African-American especially, or even like darker Latinos, the way their skin absorbs light, you can actually do so much more cool stuff with it, with lights, especially if you want to start playing with colors and that. I've never found that an issue. And now some people at this point should say, well, what if they're wearing white? Like, seriously, I'm not trying to be racist, but let's take the extreme, okay? You got a person with dark skin who's wearing white. I hate to tell you, if you're exposing properly, it's not a big deal. Like, it's just not. You may ultimately decide, okay, maybe I want to dodge the person's skin a little bit, but if you're exposing properly, it's going to be fine. The ratios are going to be what they should be, and it's not going to be a thing. I've never had a problem with that. Plus size subjects, that's a whole nother lengthy subject, Roy, and I promise you I've got some videos coming up on that. I'm going to be doing a whole series of videos working with models, and I'm actually in the process of recruiting right now. I'm going to do all different body types and one video at a time, basically take these different body types and work them through a whole series of poses and lighting and all that kind of stuff. So I will have some stuff to show you on that soon. David's asking me about Pulse Buff. I love Pulse Buff stuff. Absolutely love it. It's great. Their customer service is outstanding. Great quality equipment, user interchangeable parts, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely good stuff. Mphonic 2013. You're trying to guess my age and you're having a tough time. Well, I'll tell you my birthday is in March, but you're going to have to take a guess on the age. So go ahead. Type it. Let's see what you come up with, okay? So what else do we have here? Let's see. I'm backing up here so I get some of these other questions. Jacob Gonzalez. Tell us live how you feel about your 71,000 YouTube subscriber achievement. Congratulations, by the way. Thank you. Seriously, it's like awesome. I'm getting antsy for that 100,000 mark. Yes. For those of you that don't understand the comments, people are typing in about the plaque. When you hit certain plateaus, YouTube sends you these little plaques, and they're basically the start play buttons. So when you hit 100,000 subscribers, you get a plaque with a silver start play button in it. So it's kind of, it's like a big deal. And then at that point, too, if I go back to YouTube Space New York and if I do a shoot up there, they'll also add another picture of me to their wall of fame. But the cool part is my picture's already on the wall of fame at YouTube Space New York because I was part of the Next Up class there. So, yeah, I mean, it's exciting in the sense that if you go back to May when I started this process, Jacob, I was scared to death that I was being an idiot and that, it wasn't going to work. As much as I preach the idea of no fear, you got to take chances, all that stuff. We all have fear. The trick with fear is not to be afraid of fear. Fear's healthy. Talk to people that jump out of airplanes, skydivers, that kind of stuff. Talk to race car drivers. They're going to tell you they're fearful all the time, and they'll tell you that fear is what keeps them safe. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you on your toes. So that's really kind of been, a big part of it for me. This was something that was a big risk. My wife agreed, to support me and help me take this risk. So, there's a lot riding on it. So the fact that it's working and it's working really well, and the fact that I've been able to really kind of just jump into it and make a lot of mistakes, just like tonight, and keep going, and people have been supportive. Honestly, it's wonderful, and it makes me feel good that the idea that I had, the idea of doing it a little bit differently and really trying to get people to think outside the box and not be stuck with these rules, it makes me feel good to know there's a place for it. So yeah, seriously, definitely very, very cool. Okay. So let's see here. Other questions. Let me back up a little bit. I know there were some others. If you guys have any new ones, by the way, feel free to dump them in here at the bottom. So, well, no, Nick, I was kidding about the you suck thing. And so Nick says, I'm sure I'm sucking, although I suck a lot less than most in the business. I'm not going to lie to you, Nick. If that's really how easy you would give up. So tough talk, seriously. If that's how easy, 60, Kim O'Hagan, seriously, 60? Wow. Nick, if you would give up that easy, then, I got to tell you, based on that alone, not your photographs. I seen your photography, man. Your photography's damn good. But based on your statement that, well, I must suck that bad, so apparently it's not for me, then I would say to you, you're right, it's not for you. Based simply on that. And simply, here's what I mean, man. Nick, you gotta take a step back. You're clearly frustrated. And I understand that fact because, it is a challenge. I said it's a lot of hard work. But I also know you have a day job. So you've got this other job that is your means of support. So number one, part of your problem with photography is you're not relying on it to pay your bills. If that day job went away tomorrow and that income went away, you'd be a hell of a lot more motivated to do the right things. So now I'm not saying that you should go quit that day job tomorrow and then become a photographer because obviously you don't feel confident enough in that process. But I would say to you that if, based on the statement I made, that's your response, no, you're really missing the point. You gotta you, you gotta back up and you gotta look at things a lot more open-minded. You guys have heard me talk, and Nick, I think you've heard me say this before, so let me repeat it again because it's worth repeating. Professional photographers are idiots. Period. Quote me on that. Seriously. But let me explain at least, okay? Because I'm one. I'm an idiot. And there's a bunch of idiots listening to me right now. No professional photographer. I have yet in my entire life to meet a professional photographer who can look me in the eye and say that the very first time they purchased a camera, the very first time in their life, they either purchased one or had it given to them as a gift, that their goal was to become a professional photographer. That's not how it works. Nobody picks up a camera for the purpose of being a professional. People pick up a camera because they find it interesting, the idea that they can record things and look at it later. And then if they get into it, if the bug bites them, they love the creativity. They love the challenge. They love the problem solving. They find some creative need that taking pictures fulfills. And then the problem is, those of us that are professionals, we do that for a while, and then we have this ridiculously stupid idea. The stupid idea is always one of two versions. There's only two versions. It's either, if I could make some money with this camera, I could pay for my habit and get more gear. That's stupid version number one. Stupid version number two is, wouldn't it be cool if I could pay my bills with this thing? The minute you decide to act on one of those ideas, whether it's do it full time and pay your bills, or whether it's just start charging money so that you can buy more equipment, the minute you do that, the rules change. The requirements change. The needs change. And suddenly, if you stick with it, what you learn is that as a professional photographer, you are not spending your days taking pictures. As a professional photographer, you are not spending your days being creative and having fun. As a professional photographer, you're spending your days running a business and finding clientele and dealing with pain-in-the-ass customers. And believe me, they're a pain in the ass. And if you do all that really, really, really well, then you get to go pick up your camera and take pictures, which is what you love doing in the first place. Now, is that horrible? No. But for some people, it is. For some people, that is not the right path. So part of what you're struggling with, Nick, and seriously, I'm trying to be really honest with you, man, because I've seen your work. You do great photography. You're wickedly talented. But the moral is, professional photography may not be right for you. Your work is professional caliber. So let's be clear, so we're not mixing up the words. But to do it to pay your bills may not be the answer for you. That doesn't make it bad. And it doesn't mean you suck. It may mean you may have to be honest with yourself that it's going to continue to be a hobby. People get hung up on this word, and it's the P word, okay? The P word of professional. People get so hung up on that. I find the same thing with models. I get young girls that come to me, and I explain to them, maybe you don't really want to model professionally. Maybe what you really want is to just model and have fun. But because of that P word, that professional word, they're stubborn, and it's like, no, I want to be professional. And so basically what they do is they torture themselves and do all this stuff that they don't really want to do, and then they fail because that's not really where their heart is. And that's the key. And that's a big piece of why I'm okay not being the best photographer in the world, because I'm never going to be the best photographer in the world. In fact, Nick, I would argue you are more talented than I am. But indeed, I'm more successful in business because my mind works that way, and I don't disagree with it. I enjoy it. Do I wish I was better and more talented? God, yes, I do. It's not like I haven't tried. But I enjoy all of what I do. And so it's a win for me. So that's really kind of the point that I'm trying to make with you, Nick. And folks, I'm sorry to kind of eat up so much time on that, but I find a lot of people go through these times of self-doubt. So it's not that I'm picking on Nick. I find a lot of people come at me with that frustration. But I promise you, gang, I swear to you from the bottom of my heart, it is no harder to make money with a camera today than it was 30 or 40 years ago. It is no harder. There's always going to be a select group of people that are very successful. It's no different even with models. Not every girl gets to be a Victoria's Secret angel. There's only like 20 of them. Everybody else is just another model. It's just how it is. That's the way the world works. So don't shoot me. I'm just the messenger. Okay. Back to the age thing. Troy did his research because I know he probably like scoped it out really good. So Kim, I'll let you off the hook this time. And actually, Troy, you're technically wrong. I'm 56. I'll be 57 in March. And I can't remember off the math off the top of my head, but it's something kind of like, 29 for like the 26th time, something like that. That's how I choose to look at it. So, all right, guys. So listen, we're way over time. So I am going to say good night. I will apologize once again for the technical difficulties in the beginning. But I appreciate you guys sticking it out with me. As I explained, making some changes this week. I'm going to be bringing this new little Panasonic GH4 online. So if you come back Thursday night, things will hopefully look a little bit different, and I will not have the file corrupt on me 15 minutes before I go live. So I still need to do some work to resolve those issues. But please, gang, take a second, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. If you're not following me on social media, please do. Please check out my Patreon page also. There's some stuff there for Patreon supporters only, and there's more stuff coming. I hope to see you guys back here Thursday night for a marketing TogChat. And some of you guys had some really good marketing questions. So if you bring those back on Thursday, I will gladly dig more into them. Also, really quick, Jarek, I see you asking about Sony customer care. I don't know specifically about their mail-in service, but I will tell you, just a little side note, not to promote my video, but those conventions and trade shows, the photography events like WPPI and even the ones in Europe, all the camera manufacturers take the repair services there. So like if you have a Sony camera, you can take it in, you can get it repaired, you can get it cleaned, all that kind of stuff. So it's another great reason for going to those shows. But anyway, everybody, thank you so much. Have a great night. Remember, gang, you got to get out. You got to practice. Your best shot, it's your next shot. So until next time, gang, please keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.